If you're not a puddle right about now, holy moly. So those of you who are new, yes, our music is always that good. We're very blessed. We're very blessed. So, forgiveness. Everybody like this? I think there was a plan. So what we're actually doing is exploring the second week of a 7-week series that's based on this book called Thou Shalt Not Suffer, 7 Steps to a Life of Joy. In addition to having it be our talks for the next 7 weeks, is also accompanying these sacred circles that I spoke about earlier. It's providing the curriculum for that. Now, I can't tell you how stoked I am. We have 5 of these dynamic groups all over the city, and they're meeting in homes. They're meeting at the center, discussing the lessons, discussing the chapters from the book, and getting to know one another. It's just a beautiful community builder and a really wonderful way of going a little deeper. So, as I explained last week, it's not necessary to be in a sacred circle in order to get a benefit from the talk and the series, of course not, nor do you have to hear the talk in order to be part of the sacred circle. They're intended to be standalone, even though they're complementary to one another. So what is happening is that each week what we're doing is that we are taking one of the chapters, which is a step to explore how we can begin to build so that they'll lead us to a life of joy. Anybody here would like to have more joy in your life? Yeah. So last week, a little bit controversial. Last week, we talked about the topic of get a new God. And we explored the idea that maybe it's time for us to upgrade or even modernize our concept of God, one that reflects who we are now, not who we were when we first developed a concept of God. And we use the analogy, it's actually from the book, but we use the analogy of a little 3-year-old boy riding on a tricycle. And he's just riding, he's just whipping all around, he's just doing great. And then he's a 7-year-old boy. And he's riding the same tricycle, and he's more elbows, and he's more knees, and he's just not quite as comfortable on the bike. He looks just a little bit silly, but he gets around a little bit. And then he's now a 14-year-old boy, and he's still riding the same tricycle, and he's clearly outgrown the trike, and he looks ridiculous, but he's still trying to make it fit, right? And then he's a young man, and he's still riding the same tricycle. And he looks absolutely ridiculous and more than a little confused, shall we say. So the analogy, which really worked for me as I was picturing that in my mind, the analogy is that maybe we've outgrown the concept of God that we had when we were kids. So then last week we talked about firing our old God, which was kind of scary for people. And then writing a God-for-hire advertisement for a new one. We discussed the idea that we can make up a new God, one that works for us, because we're making it up anyway. If you really think about it, any concept of the all and everything is going to be made up anyway, because we cannot possibly fathom what the all and everything is. So we're making it up as we're going along, so why not make up a higher power that's what we want, not what our parents or society or our culture says it should be. Does that make sense? If you didn't have a chance to hear this talk, I don't usually do this, but I recommend that you go to our website, listen to it, because it's a really strong foundation for this series that we're on. And you just go to the website and go to where it says watch and listen, and you can watch the talk or you can listen to the talk and get yourself kind of caught up with things. You can do that anytime. The talks are always on the website. So this week, our second step for joy is freedom through forgiveness. And again, why I ever thought that I could cover a topic like this in a 20-minute talk, I don't know. Because what I have found is in my almost 17 years of doing this work, of being a minister, that forgiveness is one of those topics that is always relevant. It is always necessary. And it always touches people. And the truth of the matter is, this is something that we don't always understand, that forgiveness is not just a one-shot deal. It is truly a process. I said that like a Canadian. Did you notice that? Forgiveness is a process, one that needs to be practiced and worked with over and over and over again. And some of you may be thinking, I've done my forgiveness work. What do you mean? I don't want to have to visit that hurt, that resentment, that pain again. Here it comes again. Why are you back? I dealt with you already. Anybody? Yeah, me too. Well, here's the way that I describe it. Forgiveness, like spiritual growth, is like a spiral. And it starts at a particular point, wherever that hurt is, wherever that resentment is, whatever that is. And we start to do our work, we start to do our spiritual work, and we are spiraling up. But like a spiral, we're going to come back to that same plane at a different place. But because we're in a different place in consciousness, we can heal it, we can deal with it at that place. And then we spiral up again. And we come back. But we're at a different place in consciousness. We're at a different place of understanding. And so all of these things, yes, we keep coming back to it, but we know more, we've experienced more, we understand more, till we get to the point where maybe we don't have to do the forgiveness work anymore. But it isn't a one-shot deal. Is this making sense? Yeah, it's making sense to me. So we're still going to experience the resentment, but we're not going to be experiencing it at the same level that when it first happened, or when that resentment first begins. But it goes on and on and on. And this may seem like bad news to some people. It's like, no, I don't want to go through it again. I want to be done with it. I don't want to feel the hurt anymore. I don't want to feel the resentment anymore. I want to forgive and move on. However, when we remember that life is for us, then we can begin to see the actual benefits of a continued process of forgiveness. Because when we work on forgiveness, we're also healing a great many other things in our lives. So as frustrating as it might be to have to keep at it and keep at it, the process is actually for our benefit. Because every time we spiral up, we're healing more, and we're healing more, and we're healing more of everything in our life. So in the book, Mark Anthony recalls the Bible story. You know, I don't tell Bible stories very often because I often misquote them and tell them incorrectly, but I think I get this one right. When one of the disciples asked Jesus, how many times should we forgive? And you remember the answer was 70 times 7. Very specific, 70 times 7. And no, that doesn't mean 490 times, and then on the 491st you get to kick them. That's not what that means. You see, in many cultures, in many belief systems, the number 7 is actually a deeply mystical number. Here are some of them. The world, according to the Christian Bible, was created in 7 days. Now, it was probably more likely 7 billion years, but you know, what's a billion years every once in a while, right? There are 7 days in a week. There are 7 main chakras. There are 7 colors in the rainbow. Many cultures consider 7 to be that mystical number that represents completion. In numerology, 7 is the most spiritual of numbers. So when you multiply 70, which in Jesus' time just meant like a really big number, right? You multiply 70 times 7, it basically means limitless or without end, non-ending, infinite. In other words, forgiving until we don't need to forgive anymore. Here's how Mark Anthony put it. This approach does not speak so much to a single incident, but to a practice that will ultimately cleanse our consciousness of all beliefs in separation, guilt, or victimization. Forgiveness is a tool to awaken us to our wholeness. In this wholeness, all suffering ceases. And then I love this quote by Lewis Smedis, who wrote many forgiveness books. He says, "To forgive is to set a prisoner free and discover that the prisoner was you." It's like Amy's song, beautiful song about that. Yeah. So clearly this idea of forgiveness is important. It is crucial part of our spiritual unfoldment. And non-forgiveness is a block to our experiencing a life of joy. So then the question is, how to do it? How do we do it? How do we forgive? Well, I have found that there is no hard and fast rule or method to forgiveness. In fact, I got to tell you, just for kicks and giggles, as I was researching this talk, I went to Amazon.com and I just keyed in forgiveness to the thing. And you know, when Amazon comes up, it's got like 10 things on a page, right? Books and that type of thing. There were over 100 pages of forgiveness books. So this is clearly a big topic, right? You've got forgiveness retreats, you've got forgiveness rituals, you've got punching pillows, you've got journaling and radical forgiveness worksheets and meditation and prayer and smudging and sweat lodges and writing letters and burning them, because the truth is what works for one person isn't necessarily going to work for another one, right? It all depends on where you are, how open you are, how willing you are. So in the book, Thou Shalt Not Suffer, Mark Anthony actually gives us an exercise that plays on the 70 times 7 idea. And if you practice it, and it really is a spiritual practice, you understand a spiritual practice means you're never done? They're never done. Do you think somebody like Mark plays the piano because he never practices? It is spiritual practice, spiritual practice. So when we practice things like this, it can assist us to building a very solid foundation that builds toward that life of joy and freedom that we're talking about. So here is his technique. I'm just going to give it to you. I know it's a little hard to read, but you should have seen the concentric circles that I tried to draw, because these are supposed to be concentric circles, okay? You've got 7 concentric circles. There's that 7 again, right? In the very center, you have God. Next one is family. Oh, excuse me. The next one is yourself. The next one after that is family. Then you have your intimate relationships. These are your spouses and your lovers and friends. Then it's acquaintances, associates, distant connection, you know, that type of thing. Then there's the establishment. There's the government, the companies and institutions. And then the last circle there is our collective beliefs. In our teaching, we call it race consciousness or race belief, okay? So in this exercise, and if you want a copy of this, just email me, drpat@calvarycsl.org. Just email me for these 7 things in the circles, and I'll be happy to send you the slide. So what happens is you make this decision that you're going to do this thing, and you're going to start at the very middle circle, at the very beginning of the circle, the very inner circle, the one that says God. And you're going to write a prayer of forgiveness. And then you're going to repeat that prayer 10 times in a day. And then the next day you're going to go to the next circle, which would be forgiving of yourself. And you're going to write a prayer of forgiveness. And you're going to write that prayer 10 times. So, excuse me, repeat that prayer 10 times. And then you'll go to the next one, which is family, and then intimate relationships. And so By the time you've reached the outer circle, you will have read a prayer of forgiveness for 7 days times 10 repetitions a day, equaling, you guessed it, 70 times 7. That seems like it's a lot of work. It's like, oh my God, I don't want to do that much work. But I ask you to consider, how much energy are you utilizing every single day to hold those resentments or that hurt in place? You may not feel like you're expending a lot of energy, but you are, to hold that in place. So why not try something like this for 7 days? It's a week. Out of your busy schedule. You could repeat that prayer at any time, while you're driving, while you're in the shower, while you're cooking a meal. Why not try something like this and see if indeed that resentment can be lifted, or at least lightened? I love this quote by Catherine Ponder. When you hold resentment toward another, you are bound to that person or condition by an emotional link that is stronger than steel. Forgiveness is the only way to dissolve that link and get free. Everybody take a deep breath. In the book, Thou Shalt Not Suffer, he's actually written templates of the prayers that you can use. We've got a few of those for sale out in the lobby, or you can pick it up at Amazon or put it on your Kindle or anything like that. Or you could be creative and write your own prayers. And if that's you, give yourself permission to feel what's happening, to feel what it is. Allow yourself to tap into your heart and really get to it. If you need to cry, if you need to yell, if you need to say bad words, do that. Write the letter so that you will then be able, not the letter, excuse me, the prayer, so that then you would be able to let it go. In other words, make it juicy. I forgive that so-and-so for doing that thing to me. Really get it out. Now I want to say one thing also about that first forgiveness circle back here, the one with God in the center. We did a lot of this last week when we fired our old God. But what can happen is that it's really beneficial to lock it in with a prayer of forgiveness. Right? Because that's one of those core ones. So get that one done so that it's really locked in for forgiveness. Are we in agreement? Are we going to try this? Okay, so for the rest of today's service, I thought what I would do is lead us through a meditation, going through those 7 circles. So I'm going to ask Mark to come up, and I'm going to invite you to get comfortable. Put your feet flat on the floor if that's comfortable for you. Close your eyes. And just begin to put your focus on your breathing. Maybe some emotions were stirred up today. Put your focus on your breathing and allow yourself to relax. And gently bring your attention to the innermost circle called God. If there are any areas that are still unhealed in your relationship with God, allow yourself to be open to letting them go. Allow forgiveness to begin to wash away any negative ideas or beliefs that might be lingering around a God that no longer works for you. And say to yourself, I am willing to be free. And now bring your attention to the next circle, called yourself. Any areas of self-judgment, blame, sorrow, worry, guilt, or limitation. Allow them to be dissolved and washed away. And say to yourself, I am willing to be free. Come now to the next circle, called family. Any areas where someone has been less than kind and loving, nurturing and thoughtful, visualize that hurt being melted away by love. If possible, replace the hurt with unconditional love. And if you're not ready yet to be unconditionally loving, then simply bring yourself to a place of neutrality. And say to yourself, I am willing to be free. We now come to the next circle, called intimate relationships. Remind yourself that if you were hurt by a spouse, a lover, or a friend, it is because love lived there first. So allow any unhealed areas of hurt or resentment to be dissolved by the love that once existed. And say to yourself, I am willing to be free. Next we come to the circle called acquaintances. These might be co-workers, bosses, teachers, neighbors. Allow the freedom of forgiveness to permeate your thoughts and feelings and cleanse your heart and mind. Let them go. And say to yourself, I'm willing to be free. We now come to the circle called the establishment. With an important election coming up, there might be strong feelings towards politicians, companies, or institutions. Keeping in mind that we are all connected, allow those feelings to dissipate and diminish. And know that all is well. Say to yourself, I am willing to be free. And finally, our outermost circle called collective beliefs. This might be the collective consciousness thoughts of prejudice, or racism, sexism, homophobia. These feelings perpetuate the illusion of separateness when there is no separateness. We are all one. So allow the light of oneness to dissolve any anger, any resentment of our collective beliefs. And say to yourself, I am willing to be free. And when you're ready, begin to come back to the room, back to this moment. Start to feel the energy of the room once again. Wiggle your fingers and toes. And when you're ready, open your eyes. Put your hand on your heart and say with me, I am willing to be free. So I realize there's a lot more to do with this, a lot more to discuss, a lot more to experience in the realm of forgiveness, but this is a start. It is. And I feel compelled to tell you that this is your spiritual community, even if this is your first time here. This can be your spiritual community, and understand that we are all in this together. If this has brought something up for you, you might want to talk to a practitioner, give a call, make an appointment, see someone after service. If it's stirred something up for you, because together as a community we are building a life, a joy. And I love you, and so it is.